Already it had gotten late on the 7th of December, and Jiama had been working pretty late in his past life. He decided to find what he was looking for quickly so that he could call it a day. Then, the boy started wandering around in search of his humanity. He could not imagine where he had left it. He checked the fridge, but all he found inside was the blessing of the sword god. The boy was conflicted to see that his chef uniform was melting into his school uniform, and a white streak appeared in his hair. The main character was shocked at the weird way the items in the fridge were organized. Still, he was in a desperate search for his humanity. It looked like he would have to take everything out, just so that he could find it. Before he could begin, he was drawn to items called Cut It. The items called out to his psyche to cut it all. This confused the main character, and now he wondered if he had gotten enough sleep. The letters seemed different all of a sudden. Slowly, he began to realize that the words on the items in the fridge were changing, and they urged him to do it no matter what it was. Ma was urged to cut whatever stood before. The boy's eyes widened in horror at these instructions, and the fridge began to glow. The bright red light came streaming from the fridge like a beacon from another dimension, flooding the area and overpowering Jima. A really twisted countdown had started as the boy was urged to cut everything within his reach. His eyes went red as that aura dominated him, filled him, and commanded him as well. The main character was ordered to slice, and all his opponents would be cut down. The physical body of the dark-haired boy moved as he was directed, and with a sweep of his hand, he sliced. The others around called out in horror when they saw their vice-captain fall. But Ma only had a sickening look on his face. The others rushed at him in rage, calling him a little shit, and they charged at him as one, intending to catch him and hold him down. They did not need to come because Ma was also rushing at them. For a moment, the dark killers hesitated. After all, they were just fighting a kid, however. The boy sliced through them like they were nothing but ribbons floating in the wind. The opponents grimaced in shock as they fell into pieces, Ma dancing past their sprayed blood and falling body parts like they were nothing but leaves in the wind. One by one, the assassins charged in a desperate attempt to end the boy's life, and the boy weaved through and past all of them, slicing them mercilessly in a dark show of angst and emo power. The blessing had taken over his mind, and his smile had become dark and twisted. He did not even flinch at the sight of so much blood covering the area. Each life that he took was nothing, and the fighters panicked, yelling encouragement at each other to just grab the brat. They yelled to get a grip. They yelled to attack all at once, but it was no use. Even their leader had identified that as she stared at the boy in horror and fear. The dark-haired boy made quick work of her men like they were nothing, slicing them into bloody ribbons. She could not believe that they were truly facing someone who was just a cadet. The Mohawk guy standing by her asked what they should do now, and the captain was also panicking because she had assumed that their target would be easy prey. However, before she could respond, Ma came spinning into view, and he made a quick chop of Mohawk too. The man had not even seen the boy coming, and he had not stood a chance. The captain stared in horror when her subordinate fell, and she already started nervously backing away. This was supposed to be an easy job. 100 million each was good money. The man who hired them had even promised to give them a bonus as well. Now that lady realized that the crazy old man who hired them had set them up. The thing that they were fighting, the thing that had killed all her men, was surely not human. The captain was convinced that Ma was something else, maybe half human or half demon, a monster disguised as a cadet, and now that monster was racing towards her with the intention of cutting her down. The captain tensed as he approached, cursing out the boy and calling him evil. However, she froze when her back suddenly hit the floor. She was cornered, the worst place to be. The boy raised his knife, pointed it at her, and he stood over her fallen body. He had mostly taken care of his troublesome night visitors, and the captain closed her eyes, expecting to surely get cut down. There were 9 seconds left when Ma sheathed the knife in his hands. Nearly all the time had been used up because he had been fighting Leon and the Undertaker group. It had been self-defense, but the boy sure hoped that he would not need to use it again. This was a completely different and unfamiliar feeling compared to demonoids. However, his opponents were human butchers coming for his life. There had been no reason to show mercy, so he had no regrets. Fortunately, he had not entirely lost his mind either. Now, the only ones left were him and Lei Shen, who was now tied to a tree in a rather suggestive way. It was time for interrogation, and the Blade Boy asked the assassin who had sent her. Naturally, he was not about to give up information that was possibly keeping her alive that easily. This was his chance to finally learn about who was after his life and nip them in the bud, before their disease kept growing. Crushing the captain with overwhelming fear was the most effective way to make her confess. However, the boy knew that if he cut off her head without hearing the whole story, he was sure that he would regret it. The boy asked if she was stupid or brave. She was doing great, putting on airs and acting confident. but he had just single-handedly wiped out all of her subordinates, leaving them in a bloody mess. It was best for her to start talking while he was still being nice. The lady bit her lip, gritting her teeth in rage as she hissed at him, reminded of the carnage that he had wrought. She called him a demon, and coughed from how worked up she had gotten. Then, the captain huffed in amusement, saying that she now understood why that person had put a hit on him. She should have realized when all of his personal records were erased. Even his relatives and parents were gone. It was so suspicious. The captain was pissed that the old man had dared to hire them to take out a villain disguised as a cadet, and she went on bitterly ranting. She had a good reason to be upset. But Jum-ma zoned out for a hot minute as he considered her words and what he was saying. He had no idea that all of his family records had been erased, and he still vaguely remembered his parents from this world. It was true that he barely looked like their son, but he could not even remember their faces anymore. Now the boy was panicking, and he demanded that the captain repeat what she had just said. The lady was confused, but the boy was already bringing out his weapon again. He wanted to know exactly why his relatives and parents had been erased. The captain was alarmed to see him ready to go crazy again. Originally, he had just planned to hear the name of the one who had hired her, and then he would send her off peacefully. But now, it seemed that he had something else to ask her. Something that he really had to know, and the assassin captain began to panic. For the record, Jum-ma said that this was not a negotiation. This was, in fact, a threat. The girl panicked, her body trembling as the boy said that even if she lost her arm or leg, she could still talk after all. Suddenly, a huge blast of power erupted from the silver-haired girl, so great was its force that it stopped the boy in his tracks. The girl gritted her teeth as the oppressive pressure of her gift washed over the dark-haired boy. The main character was shocked to suddenly feel such a large amount of overwhelming magic pressure. Then, all of a sudden, it stopped. Then he glanced behind him and saw that the blood of the corpses was doing something weird. The blood flowed past the boy, clinging to the tied captain, who panicked as the blood crawled up her. She cried for the blood to stay away, but it had no intention of listening to her demands. Even Jum-ma was confused as blood rushed from behind him to touch upon the bound girl. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, the Sword Emperor was busy having a blast. The fishing rod he was using was for management purposes, but it was not so bad when used in practice. The only problem was that he had not gotten a single bite since he started fishing. The man sighed, saying that the fishing rod was not living up to its high price. Suddenly, the water began to swell and rise, and the Sword Emperor got excited, thinking all of his sitting and waiting was finally about to pay off. However, so many fish erupted from the water at one time that it was like there was something down there that was worse than the fishing rod. The Emperor was alarmed as he recognized the essence of that power. This level of magic power could only be a commander from the demonic forces. The captain cried out and screamed as the blood flooded her being and filled her, despite her desperate and weak attempts to fight against it. The girl begged that she would tell Oreo-hair everything that she knew if he would just help her, please. Jima himself was not sure how to help. He had never seen anything like this before, and he was not sure how he was supposed to fight the flood of blood. The girl cried out with tear-filled eyes, begging him that she did not want to die. There was a sparkle of bright light and magic, and it suddenly descended from above like fire from a dragon's mouth. That bright golden beam eradicated everything where the girl had been tied down. Its light was blinding, brilliant, and final. The purple-haired demon teacher was surprised when she saw that glow all the way from where she was posted, and she wondered if her lord had come. A piece of metal fell to the ground, and the sky was lit up like night had turned to day. Jum-ma stood in the clearing, silent as the smoke began to fade away. There was a sigh of relief from within the smoke cloud, and then there was mad laughter as the captain was revealed to be standing, her head thrown back in pleasure. The being in her body overcame with delight, as it had been 700 years since it had been able to cross into the human world. The boy's eyes widened in horror as he realized who now stood before him. This level of magic power that made the mermaid back then seem like a small fish, that power was emanating from the captain now in terrifying waves. This impure flame could only belong to the one who cooed and called him Little One, the Demon King's Army, 5th Legion Commander, the succubus, the dream demon. The bewitching flame, also known as Aigor. The demoness laughed wickedly, throwing her head back as the sky filled with smoke and debris. Burnt birds fell from the sky, heated by her miasma of evil. For a moment, the demoness took a pause to wonder if she was greeting in the right way, just like humans did. After all, it had been 700 years since she had left the demon realm to visit the human world, so she was not so sure about current human customs anymore. At any rate, suddenly acting deceptively cute, the burning woman introduced herself as Aigor, the commander of the Demon King's 5th Legion. Then she said it was nice to meet the main character who was not as thrilled about meeting her. Still, Aigor pressed on with a cute tilt of her head and asked his name. The boy was speechless as she stared at the demons, and she pouted about him not even answering her question. That was really cold of him after all. Meanwhile, Ji-ma was trying to figure out how he could get out of this situation. He needed to try and dig up some of his memories. Even the smallest seemingly useless fragments could serve as a mirror that would let him see into the future. And he desperately needed to do that now that he was facing a monster that was way out of his league. The biggest advantage that Ji-ma had for surviving in this world was the memories he gained from playing the game in the real world. Now, he tried to remember all that he could about the succubus Aigor. He could still remember the basic details about her on Wiki, back when he quit the game. However, he had no idea why the succubus had come down to the human world after 700 years. Even worse, he had no idea why she would use possession to descend, using Li Shen as a host. The whole situation was getting out of hand and downright terrifying. Suddenly, the succubus grinned and asked the boy if this was his doing. She was quite impressed to see all the wonderful discarded bodies just laying around. No wonder the boy had not seemed at all like an ordinary human. Plus, there was the fact that the boy was still standing insane after seeing her maddening appearance. Looking at him now, the lady smiled and noted that he was just a whelp, but the boy would probably turn out to be a lot more in the future. In that case, she had a wonderful idea. Shining her evil demonic eyes wide, the bold demon immediately demanded that he form a contract with her. Such a proposal was unacceptable, and the boy backed away, but the demoness pressed closer. She told him to feel honored since this was his special chance to become her slave, as if anyone would want to become a slave. In the end, humans could act noble all they wanted, but deep down inside they judged each other and created their own weird pecking orders. They chased after their own interests, killing others and causing pain. So in her opinion, it would be so much better for him to just sacrifice his life so that he could dream of glory by her side. She had come really close now, gently rubbing his chin as she tried to seduce him. The boy found his mind getting taken over, and he found himself thinking that perhaps this demon was right. Human beings had always been the worst of most creatures on the earth. Honestly, the tired main character wanted to survive and accept Aigor's offer. It would after all be the right thing to do, according to his drugged mind. On top of that, his ultimate goal of survival would be much easier if he just sided with the Demon King's army and brought down the human race. The beautiful Reedhead cooed, and even called him handsome as she filled him with her powers, evaporating common sense with her special dream of glory. Ji-ma started to seriously consider accepting her offer. However, his thoughts were quickly sliced in two. The blessing of the sword god ignited in his soul, and it informed him that the opponent they were to fight was a demon, the succubus queen Aigor. Meanwhile, the succubus queen was shocked to see that the boy had actually broken free from her high-level magic. That was extremely shocking, and she wondered if her weak vessel was messing up her powers. She'd only made a contract with the girl, because she wouldn't stop whining, but it did not seem worth it anymore. The demon sighed and complained about the guy who supplied her hosts and asked how she could do anything if her host was this weak. Suddenly the boy before her began to laugh, and this surprised the succubus queen very much. She asked if he had just laughed, and the boy said that he found all of her nonsensical barking rather amusing. There was silence at the audacity of this statement, and for a moment, the fairy queen was too shocked to say anything. Then, Ji-ma reached into his clothes and pulled out his weapon as he prepared to give her an answer about the offer to become her slave. Naturally, he was going to pass on that, and the demon grinned with irritation on her face to see him fighting back. She mumbled about how he had no manners. The boy was lit with vibrant blue flames of justice as he prepared to battle his foe, and he sliced at her flames as she hummed and idly blasted more fire in his direction. The main character fought earnestly, but he'd been fighting since his encounter with Leon, and she was a top-level foe. So, he struggled to land a hit on her, and she yawned in amusement at his weak skills. Still, the boy did not give up, and he swung his knife with the urge to kill, exciting the succubus as she watched. The knife was swung in a brilliant blue arc that surely would have severed a normal foe. Instead, the succubus just laughed at his efforts, truly amused beyond comparison. The demoness laughed that she had been half joking when she said it the first time. But all of this effort he was showing was really making her want him more, which was concerning since he was so young and she was grandma age. Now Aigor was visibly interested in the fight, and she called out to her opponent to ask just how far his abilities could go. She called herself his Nuna, which means elder sister in Korean, and said that she would have to check for herself. The demoness then activated Inferno, which exploded in a blast of fiery magic all over the fighting space. The main character was alarmed by the sudden shock of power, and the demon laughed, telling him to do his best. Roaring flames came soaring towards him, but the boy was unperturbed. Instead, he pulled out a sashimi knife, slashing the flames and the fire split, unable to touch him or do him serious harm. The redhead was shocked when she saw this, but she was also pleased. Ma was fast at dodging and he zipped around at the speed of light. Those flames were unable to touch him as he swept through the area with his sashimi knife. Now the demon was cautious as the boy was now showing power that had gone past human limits. Meanwhile, on her end, she wondered how long it had been since she had descended, and she was adapting a bit slowly to her new form. Before she could compute thoughts, she saw her opponent behind her raising his knife. He had already caught up much to her surprise, and she was so pleased to see how fast he was. Then he sliced, their power hitting together in a huge blast. Smoke filled the area after that huge attack, and the demoness couldn't help but chuckle. Her opponent really had an impatient personality, and she couldn't help but smile about it. Despite his strong attack, she had been able to block it with only one hand. The boy was shocked. Aigor grinned, asking him why he was in such a hurry. After all, his big aunt was here and she had all the time in the world. However, he had no time to mess around. His painless blessing could only last for so long, and he could not risk drawing out this fight for longer than he could handle. The redhead was surprised when Ma lunged again with his next attack. His time was fast running out. The seconds were counting and ticking, and Aigor realized that the boy was getting faster and faster. Their power clashed and there was a huge blast in the area with sparks of yellow and red. The counting numbers reminded the main character that he was running out of time. Still, the battle raged until those counting numbers hit 0. There was a huge spark in the area, and slowly the dust settled to reveal the main character. The boy was panting for breath, his body covered in bruises, his sashimi knife sparkling with power, but he had run out of the healing blessing. If he fought any further, he would be in huge pain. Meanwhile, Aigor casually flexed her cut-up fingers. They had been sliced to ribbons but were already quickly healing. The claws from 700 years ago was slowing her down, and she just could not get used to this red blood. The demoness licked her lips as she laughed at how it felt like she had become a human herself. It was really such a waste to leave the talented boy that she had scouted as only a human, and she greatly admired the determination that consumed her opponent's body. It was truly captivating to her. The boy was lacking in manners, but she admired his fiery passion. At his age, he might have more potential than the other kid that was prophesied to be the holy vessel. Meanwhile, Ma was struggling to get his bearings as his opponent continued to idly chatter, saying that she was almost fully adjusted to this new body of hers. Then, she wondered if he could become the one to fulfill their wish. So, Aigor would give him one last test and she leapt into the sky, her hands bubbling with flames, telling the boy that if he could withstand her last attack, then he would pass her test and win her game. The magic that she activated was called Flamma, and the boy barely had the strength within him to move. Meanwhile, the redhead demoness chuckled, saying that he had to at least endure this much. Fire came racing towards Ma, and the main character had just about reached his breaking point when someone leapt into the fray. The fire was indeed blocked by the strong sword emperor, who arrived just in time to protect his favorite student, swinging his weapon with incredible ability. He yelled for the dark-haired boy to pull himself together, while the demoness threw a hissy fit at her crazy game getting interrupted. She asked the old man not to butt in between them, since they were busy having fun by themselves. However, the old man refused to back down. See, Ma was very precious to him after all. He would absolutely not let the demon touch that boy. So she hissed back that he should try his best to protect the precious boy then, if he could, and then she rained down even more fire to annihilate both man and boy. The demoness Aigor really had no joy. Meanwhile, the main character was still struggling deep inside the realm of his powers, and he wondered if he had finally died. He heard the low sound of coughing and his eyes widened in shock to see a figure on fire that was standing before him. The main character's vision finally cleared and his eyes widened to see the old man protecting him with his body. The Sword Emperor had come to save his life. The boy was greatly surprised. With that last panel, we're totally caught up with all the latest chapters of this manhwa once again. I hope you guys have been enjoying the journey and looking forward to more, as I'll try my best to keep covering it as soon as new chapters get released. So sit back, relax, subscribe to stay notified for future uploads, and be sure to engage yourself in incredible fantasy. Until next time.